Everyone, just to the point podcast, but was doing well on this Remembrance Day. It's a day that we're gonna have a few podcasts here on To the Point, but also it's an important day just to reflect and think about all the freedoms and all the liberties that we have as people, and what we're able to do, and you know just thinking about it in grand scheme over thinking over the past 18 to 20 months, whatever it's been, the whole COVID-19, and nobody complains about it more than me. Wearing a mask, and I bicker with my parents because I think in my era with millennials, or Gen Z, whatever it is, I think we're more of a buck the trend. We're not great at listening to authority. That's something I've never been really good at. I probably should have, but we got to appreciate what's in front of us. Yes, we have to wear a mask to go into a store, but we can go into a store. We can go buy groceries. We can, go for a walk down the road without fear. And that's something we just don't think about. Where in, other countries around the world in war-torn lands, they don't have that option. If you go down the road, there could be a landmine, there could be something. And yeah, I just think so many great Canadians have died. I talked about with Seamus. He asked me, what this day means to me. I know at 11 o'clock, I'm going to stand for 2 minutes in complete silence. And that's just something I do. I stand, and if you can't take 2 minutes to just do nothing but think and just take honor and just respect the people that have passed away, I don't think that's very much to ask. So, I'm going to talk some sports today. I'm going to have another podcast today with Casey Ward this afternoon, where I talk a lot about the NHL. But at the same time, you can do all that. You can do yard work, whatever you want to do on this, a weird week where you have Thursday off from work for, 95% of people. But it's also just a day to think, well, I'm appreciative of this. I'm happy that we've gotten this. And that's something that I plan on doing today. So, just thank you to every soldier that's given me the right to have this platform. You think about it, in some places around the world, having a platform, having a podcast can be seen as divisive, can be seen, in a communist country, speaking out against things that are incorrect. Like, I think of myself, I've spoken about Black Lives Matter. I've spoken about sexual orientation, different things that come up in this sports realm, but that have ties to the society as a larger group as a whole. If I was in China, if I was in Russia, guess what? If I made those type of comments, you may never see me again. And that might sound like I might say that in a joking manner, but I'm really not. Speaking out against the status quo is not accepted elsewhere in some countries. And even, you could say, social media has its flaws, and I think it's predominantly negative, especially in the last 10, 12 months. I think it's really gotten bad. But at least, every person has the right to post something. Hopefully it's more positive, and there's less Karens out there who just like to cancel everybody, shame them, what have you. But you have that option, to do that. And whether it's Facebook or whatever, if it's Meta, they're calling it now, or Instagram, you can be who you want to be. And a lot of that has to be thanked to soldiers, because they fought for us to have freedoms. And having that platform is just another one. Having the option to wear the clothing that you want to wear, to show off who you are as a person. A lot of that has to do with our military and what they've done for us over, so many, decades here, for us Canadians. So thank you to every soldier that has fought, that has continued to fight. And just know that from one, little Canadian here, I appreciate it. Today is a day to honor you and, everything that you've done in such a positive light for our great country. So happy Remembrance Day, and we'll talk about that as the day goes on. But like I said, there's sporting news. Sports world goes on. It is Thursday. Big slate of NHL games tonight. Thursday night football. Like I said, Casey Ward will join me this afternoon. We'll talk about a lot of different things. One being just depth. I talked about that on Tuesday. Teams that are winning is because of depth. And it's really the central theme. Goaltending, what have you, but teams that aren't getting depth scoring, they're not going to win long term. But I want to start off by talking about Bob Murray, who resigned as the general manager of the Anaheim Ducks last night and said he's going to be entering an alcohol abuse program. And, Bob is really the second guy, big name this year that's entered kind of a player assistance program. And the other was Carey Price. And Carey Price came out this week. He's returned to the Montreal Canadiens and admitted to having a substance abuse problem. He didn't specify if it was alcohol, if it was, an opioid when it comes to pain medication. But he did say that he was struggling, that, he resorted back to, doing something far too often. And I'm not going to speculate. I know he had an alcohol problem at the beginning of his career, but he just had hip surgery. So it very well could have been, an opioid, a pain med, morphine, whatever. But, Bob Murray was getting investigated because of his conduct. And obviously we saw Jim Montgomery get fired from the Dallas Stars last year, predominantly because he had an alcohol problem. He was an alcoholic and his behavior was not good. And the team basically said, okay, we like you, but we've had enough. And they had to turn to Rick Bowness. So normally I think the narrative would be, well, this is two guys, two prevalent names. They got problems. This is about the sports world and this is the behavior. That's not where I'm going. I look at Bob Murray, who's an elder guy, Carey Price, who is one of the best goaltenders the game of hockey has ever seen. Most, even Toronto fans, respect Carey Price because he's that good. I give these guys a ton of credit for going into these programs. And yes, they're there and you're an athlete. You have the ability to go to them, but it's also checking your ego. It's also being in the public eye and people knowing, Carey Price was at a player assistance program. Bob Murray, a Stanley Cup winning general manager, is in an alcohol abuse program. That's people that go to rehab, me or you might never know. It's small potatoes. We're talking about millions of people knowing a very, very personal part of your life. And I give credit to both men for recognizing that something was wrong and, managing it. Carey Price said it was, he battled substance abuse and it also really affected his mental health over the last couple of years. And that was a big reason why he was turning to a substance. And, Carey Price is not a guy that lets you know a lot about his personal life. He's a guy that's very guarded. When he does his media, he's quite boring and, very status quo. But for him to even divulge that is a big step. And of course, you would have liked the Montreal Canadiens would have loved Carey Price to come in this year after coming off a Stanley Cup final to be ready game one. That's the ideal world. But I also think we got to look at the world and say, that's just not what happens. Carey Price played through the entire playoffs last year. And after it, he had to have a major surgery. So that means he's playing through pain that entire time period. He's battling for the club. And through all of that, he might have needed to turn to something, or in the summer following rehab, he needed to to do something else. And it's, again, you would have liked both men to not be in this position, of course. But this is just life. This happens to people where they need to deal with it. You know, the Atlanta Falcons wide receiver, Calvin Ridley, is not playing right now. And he said he's leaving because he needs to address his mental health. Lane Johnson, the great left tackle for the Philadelphia Eagles, a Super Bowl champion, just came back. He just did a sit-down interview with Fox's Jay Glazer about how he never addressed his mental health issues. He's had them for years. And again, this is a new culture. This is a new time period where mental health, even 10 years ago, is really not a thing that was discussed, even acknowledged. And I just think it's something we need to accept, need to adapt towards as a society, and just say, you know what, this is something that's going to be talked about. It can affect everybody. It's going to affect our athletes. Athletes are no different than you and me. They just make a lot more money. But that doesn't affect what's going on, up here. So in the case of Bob Murray, it's unfortunate that it's ending this way in Anaheim, because obviously it's great that he's getting help, but they're starting to turn it around in Anaheim. Trevor Zegras looks like a good player. Maxime Comtois is a guy that I've liked for a long time. I think he's legit. He's a very good player. Troy Terry, who was the American hero at the World Juniors 3 or 4 years ago, is off to a tear this season. Already got 9 goals, had the OT winner Tuesday night against the Vancouver Canucks. Jamie Drysdale, great young Canadian defenseman. The kid's legit. I think, they got pieces. John Gibson is likely to be, the second goaltender on the Team USA depth chart at the Olympic Games behind Connor Hellebuck. They have building blocks. Are they a superpower yet? No, but they're getting better, is my point. And he's been there a long time. And just for reference, he was hired in 2006 by Brian Burke, and Berkey and him worked together in Vancouver. Berkey chronicles this in his book. If you haven't bought it, I highly recommend it. I think I got it last year for Christmas. But they worked together in Vancouver. Then Berkey got hired in Anaheim. He hired Bob to be his AGM. 2006, they get to the Western Conference Final, lose to the Edmonton Oilers, who, if you remember at that time, acquired Chris Pronger. They had Sean Horkoff, Alex Hemsky, and they went to Game 7 with the Carolina Hurricanes. Ultimately fell short after their starting goaltender was injured in Game 1 of that Stanley Cup Final, and really that put the Jan Denis had to come in and play stopgap. Wasn't enough for the Oilers to win the Cup. The next season, they knew they were close. They had Teemu Selanne, Ryan Getzlaf, Corey Perry were rookie players. Teemu, a little older, but still had a lot left in the tank. Obviously Teemu was one of the best players to ever play the game. Scott Niedermayer on the back end, who I see as the players I've seen, the second best defenseman that's ever played. And honestly, I think he might even be better than Lidstrom. And who do they get? They get Chris Pronger to play with that team, and that team wins the Cup against Ottawa in 5 games. So Bob Murray was a Stanley Cup champion. Berkey departed in 2008, became the GM of the Toronto Maple Leafs. I wonder if he regrets that decision now. But when he departed, since then, Bob Murray has been the general manager. And they've gotten back to conference finals. They've gone through periods where they're competitive forever with Corey Perry and with Ryan Getzlaf. But now, they're in a new stage of development where, like I said, they're bringing in the youth. They still have Ryan Getzlaf on the team. He's still very much there, but they're transitioning into the future of the team. They are, 7-4-3 to start the season. A really good start for the Ducks. No expectations, but Vegas is banged up in that division. They are third. You look at that division, Edmonton's first, followed by Calgary. Then there's Anaheim, San Jose, LA, Vegas, Vancouver. It's really been the disappointing team for me. But So Bob Murray he was in the last year of his contract. Maybe they let him go anyway, but it would have been, better to see Bob go out in his own terms. And maybe he gets another crack down the line if he can, improve his situation. Carey Price, of course, in the opposite, he's back with the Canadians now. They are in such a deep, deep state of affairs where they are a terrible team. I mean, they get a point against LA Tuesday night, and that was like a victory. And I don't know where this team goes. I don't think it's going to be good for this team, but if Carey Price does come back, I mean, their season's already over. It'll be just to play stopgap duty, just to relieve Jake Allen, who's playing a ton of hockey right now. But like they said, they don't expect Carey Price to play anytime soon. So I'm interested to see how they handle that situation and when he comes back, and, what the future of Carey Price is in Montreal, because I think we'll see Marc Bergevin. He's in the last year of his deal. And I've said this forever. If you're going to let a GM go at the end of the year, he should be let go before the trade deadline. Because why would you let a GM that you don't see running your organization long-term make trades for draft capital, basically, because you're not going to be going to the playoffs? Why would you let a GM make those deals that you're going to let go? Move on to your future. Start thinking about who you'd like to run your team long-term. I think Berge has done some really good things in Montreal. He's also done some really bad things. Something I could say he's never done since he got there is address the Sunrise position. He may have finally done it with Nick Suzuki, but prior to that, he could not get a number one center on his roster. He's never done it. I think the Shea Weber deal, that's a success. That was a good deal. I said that from day one. I would have traded Shea Weber for PK Subban straight up, regardless of the contract. Both men had big tickets, but Shea Weber is a better player than PK Subban, and he's been proven right. He got to a Stanley Cup final. But has he done enough to provide quality scoring on his rosters? I think you could argue no, but he's also gotten to a Stanley Cup final. That is on his resume. You can't take that away from him. Whether you think the Leafs win was a fluke, the series was a fluke, it doesn't matter. He got to a Stanley Cup final. A lot of GMs around the league can't say that. So interested to see where Montreal goes. Me and Casey will talk about that this afternoon, because he's kind of a quiet Montreal fan, and I'm interested to hear what he thinks, what he wants to see them do long term, and is Dominic Ducharme behind the bench long term as well. Even though he's on the first year of a 3-year deal, Montreal is not a patient organization. Jeff Molson has been very patient with Marc Bergevin. I'll give him that, but he's quicker to fire the coaches. And when you bring in a new GM, they normally like to hire their own person. Now, the options would be more limited in Montreal than the rest of the NHL, because they only hire French-speaking coaches, head coaches anyway, which is ridiculous to me. But nevertheless, that's how they approach it. And, they haven't won a cup since 93. So it shows you how successful their thinking has been. But back to the top, just kudos to both guys. Hopefully Bob can get back in the game, and you'll hopefully see Carey Price back on the ice sooner rather than later. Last night, there's only 3 games in the NHL. I'll talk about Toronto in a minute, but there's a very quiet team, and they don't get a lot of publicity. This city gets more publicity because the quarterback of their football team has great stats this year, but the team is 2 games below 500. And I'm talking about the city of Minnesota. And Kirk Cousins, 16 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 3-5 record. How does that happen? But Minnesota Wild, in that Central Division, they are a really good team. That's what I can say about Minnesota. They surprised people last year when they made the playoffs, gave Vegas a run, went to 7 games. Well, that surprise factor is gone. The Minnesota Wild are truly a great, great team. And they won 6 straight. And last night's not the most impressive win on that 6-game streak. They beat the Arizona Coyotes, who have 1 win and are more and more pathetic as the weeks go by. They are 1-11-1. But I talk about depth, and you'll probably get tired of hearing that word, but it's why these teams are winning. That's why I have to talk about it. You can have all the superstars you want. Why are these teams winning? Because you have depth down the lineup. Let's look at Minnesota. Marcus Foligno is a fourth line winger by trade, a fighter, a good penalty killer, just a tough, hard-nosed guy. He's got 5 goals already this season. Kevin Fiala, a 3-point night last night. Jared Spurgeon had 2 points. Matt Zuccarello continues. Zuccarello is having a bounce-back season in Minnesota where he's finding back in that. Joel Eriksson Ek has 7 points, a guy I'm a big fan of. Marcus Foligno has 9 points. Jordan Greenway's getting back in the lineup. I mentioned the other day about Ryan Hartman, Kaprizov, Nico Sturm. It looks like a good young kid. Zuccarello, 9 points in 8 games, over a point per game. And so you get depth scoring. Their back end is solid. I like Matt Dumba. Spurgeon's the captain of the team. He's good. Brodeen's been there a long. They have a D that's been together for a while. They added Goligoski in the offseason and Dmitry Kulikov, who's been a very good player for them. But they have depth. They got elite talent. I mean, Kaprizov is one of the most talented players in the league. He's one of the most fun players to watch in the league. Just the way he can dance with the puck, the way he can see across ice, some of the wild goals he scores. But also, I love and hate my argument right now for another reason. Minnesota's great, but what I hate about them is that they have a tandem. And maybe Cam Talbot is emerging as a number one. He started all 7 games in the playoffs last year, was phenomenal in games 5 and 6, had a shutout in game 6. But, last night it was Capo Kakinen in net. Cam Talbot, they're on a back-to-back in Vegas tonight, so we will see Cam Talbot. But I hope they know who their number one is. I think it is Cam Talbot. He's had 9 starts this season. Kakinen's only had 3, so that tells you where they stand with that. But, you want to have stability in net. You want to have a guy that you trust. And to me, you need a guy to be a number one and win a Stanley Cup. These tandems don't work. They don't win Stanley Cups. They might win you regular season awards. They might win you, claps, but they don't win you the hardware. So I'd like to see Cam Talbot emerge as a number one goaltender, start 50-plus games this year. Be that guy that Minnesota relies on and trusts. And you're on a back-to-back tonight, and Vegas is banged up. They're not what they used to be, but go win that game. Go win 7 in a row. Go into Vegas on a back-to-back and prove what you can do tonight for Minnesota. And I think they're a very, very good team. And I look at the standings in the Central. They're first place. They played one more game than St. Louis, and, they got one more point. But St. Louis right there, Winnipeg is 3 behind them. Nashville quietly has 15 points. Brian Johansson's having a bounce back season. Duchesne's starting to score some goals. I do think that'll die down because, you look at this division and the most disappointing team in hockey to me so far. I mentioned Vancouver a lot. They've disappointed me, but Colorado has 9 points in 10 games. And I get it. They've been through a lot. McKinnon had COVID to start the year, and Bednar had COVID, and they've gone through, some injuries and things like that. But you got 9 points in 10 games. Your team looks out of sorts. And then yesterday it was announced that Nathan McKinnon's out 3 weeks with an upper body injury. He drives the bus there. He's the engine of that team. And you look at Gabriel Landeskog, you look at Mikko Rantanen. Well, Landeskog, they re-signed you for this reason. You need to step up. You need to be a focal point of this team and not just be a complementary piece. You don't have your best player for a long period of time. You need to be that guy. But I look at this team and I have real worries about it because they lost to Columbus the other night. That's going to happen. But their defense, it's a lot. They have Cale Makar, who's an elite guy. Don't get me wrong. I'd take him on my team any day of the week. But he's hurt right now. And when he's injured, this is who they get to play. Byram. Okay, Byram's a young kid. Great when it comes to his offensive game. Defensively, has his problems. Sami Gerard's basically a Byram, but he's worse defensively, and he doesn't have much offensive upside. Just for reference, he's a -7 this season. Again, that's an archaic stat, but you watch the games, he gets burnt a ton, and he's not a guy that just always happens to be on the ice. Okay, Eric Johnson. Eric Johnson's on his last legs, and I don't want him in my D-core permanently. Jack Johnson has been gone for a long time. I mean, again, Ryan Murray on the D-core. Okay. I like Devon Toews when he's only played one game this year. So good to see him back in the lineup. But when you don't have a great defense core, you don't have your top-notch scorers, and then you look, Darcy Kemper, he's not been great, and he's not going to be great like he was. He's not going to be great here because his defense is not that good, quite frankly. And, Burakovsky is scoring goals. But you look around, Kadri's got to do more. He's a guy that has a lot, and he's point per game. But with him gone, he's got to do. Tyson Jost, 2 points in 10 games. That's not enough. Just being on, I feel like a lot of guys, Rantanen's got 5 and 7. He needs to do more. I feel like guys play in the bottom 6 this year, and I've noticed they just feel like if they're on the ice and they don't get scored on, well, okay, that's okay. No. For an elite team like Colorado, for a team like, I look at last night, Toronto, that you think you can win a cup, your second, third, and fourth line can't just go out there and wheel the puck around. Oh, we didn't get scored on. That's okay. You need to provide some offense, because there are nights during the regular season and the playoffs when your stars aren't just going to have it. Not everybody's Braden Point or Nikita Kucherov. There are nights when you're going to need Blake Coleman and guys of that nature to step up. And why did Tampa win the cup? Well, Vasilevsky and Price, that's basically a wash. I think Vasilevsky's better than Price, but you get my point. Up front, yeah, I think the stars of Tampa are clearly better, but why did Tampa win? In game 1, they had 3 goals from the third line. In game 5, they had 2 goals from the third line. Depth scoring won them the Stanley Cup. Montreal had none. They went dry too often. Kotkaniemi was a healthy scratch. Jake Evans was not scoring. Cole Perfetti could not score. I'm sorry, not Cole Perfetti. Cole Caulfield could not score. Cole Perfetti is in Winnipeg. Their depth just couldn't score. Tampa's did. Having elite pieces is so important, of course. But that's not everything. It's about having a team. Connor McDavid is the best player in the world currently. He's won one playoff series. One. That's the best player in the world. One playoff series in his career. Why? Because the rest of his lineup was garbage. They couldn't add anything. And I'll give credit to a team like Toronto, and this is where I look and I have a little more faith in this team. Yes, their depth are giving them nothing. That Kasha goal last night, good for you, Kasha. I didn't notice you for 2 weeks. But at least they're not getting scored on. I will give them that. You're matching up against the other team's third line and you're getting a wash. But that can't be the whole season. And this isn't just a 2-game pocket. We're seeing 2 weeks worth of games where a Toronto Maple Leafs depth are adding nothing. Nick Ritchie might as well just be a healthy scratch because I don't know what he does out there. Nothing. He's on the power play. He's just the freaking elephant man out there. Kudos to Bill Nylander. Kudos to John Tavares, Mitch Marner, Matthews to a lesser extent, because I don't think he's been that good this season. But they're providing the offense. Nothing from the back end. Nothing. Kasha, Ritchie, Engvall, Simmons. Where is it? and you're winning without it. And that's why I said the Stars are playing fantastic. Bully for you. But this is about long-term. You're going to win some games because your Stars are just great that night. But what did we see last year in the playoffs? The Stars went pretty dry for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner would have had a better chance of hitting a fan in the stands and putting a puck in the back of the net. And maybe they switch it around. But I know hockey. You need balance because there's just games where you don't have it. You need your teammates to step up and do something for you in some moments. Tampa had it. I look at them this year, they lack it. So far this season, a great game on Tuesday night was Tampa, Carolina. I watched every shift of it. And Carolina won 2-1, but why are they winning a lot this year? Because they have such a good friggin' team. A team. To me, Carolina's best player, you could say Aho, you could say Svechnik. It's Jacob Slavin. I guarantee I might be the only person on the planet that says that. But they get balance. Slavin is adding assists. Pesci chips in. Neckash gets the overtime winner. Teravainen scores a goal. Martinuk. They just get balanced across their lineup. That's why they're where they are. Minnesota's first in the Central. Why? Because they have balanced scoring. Why does Montreal stink? Yes, their defensive structure, the defensive systems are out of whack. But do they also not get – they don't get enough from anybody. Gallagher, Anderson, Drouin. These guys aren't doing enough. Could Jake Evans chip in a goal? That would probably mean a lot. Calgary has Majanapani, Lindholm, Goodrow, Kachuk. You name it. They're getting guys. Rasmus Anderson are scoring goals. Throughout their lineup, they are getting guys that are chipping in. It's so important to winning long-term, to winning consistently in this league. Now, I mentioned last night, Nashville. The Preds are a mess, but look at Nashville. Tanner Ginott. Have you ever heard of this guy? No, me either, for the season. He's got 5 goals. He had two points last night. Colton Sissons gets a goal last night. Duchesne's got 6. It's just telling you how they're winning. Getting depth. You got a good goalie, that's important. But Duchesne's got 11 points in 13 games. Credit to him. Really good start for him. Granlund's got 11 points in 13 games. Ginott, the right winger's got 7 and 13, scoring a lot of goals though. Johansson's got 9 and 13. Luke Kunin less. But I'm going through the lineup here. They're getting success across the lineup from guys you wouldn't necessarily expect. And that's how you win long term. And teams like Toronto, teams like Edmonton that are winning, the Boston Bruins are struggling with this. I mentioned that. You need it before the season goes out. Florida has it. Washington is a team that I worry about as well. That just doesn't. Ovi's got 11 goals in 12 games. It's the best start of his career. He's 36. Do I think he's going to slow down? No, because he's Alex Ovechkin. I still think he'll score 40 plus. But when it comes to the playoffs, is Connor McMichael going to score a big goal for this team? Do I trust him? No. I don't bank on Connor McMichael scoring a big goal for the Washington Capitals. Jakub Vrana is hurt. TJ Oshie's hurt, sorry. Anthony Mantha, Nick Backstrom, Nick Dowd. You need some of these guys back. But when you're playing currently, do I bank on them being heroes? I don't. I trust Tom Wilson. I trust Ovechkin, obviously. But you look at Sheary. Can you add something? Daniel Sprong, your first-round pick. What do you got, buddy? Brett Leeson. Garnet Hathaway, my guy. I love him, but he's pointless through 12. Lars Eller doesn't have a goal yet. So it's just these teams that, again, we're only a month into the season. But you're also almost 15 games in. And when you go through 7 game pockets where you don't hear a guy's name on the score sheet because he hasn't done anything, that's an issue. That's alarming. That's not overreaction Monday. That's just straight facts. So we'll see how that goes down the stretch here. We'll talk about more about that this afternoon with Casey Ward. But tonight, the NHL, we get a full slate. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 games in the NHL. Oilers in Boston. That should be an interesting game. Florida against the Penguins. Florida's dropped 2 straight. See if they can bounce back. Washington at Detroit. We'll see if Ovi can break the past Brett Hull for 4th all time in goals. Sharks, Jets, Canucks, Avalanche. Again, 2 interesting teams, 2 very struggling to start the year. See if they can get off the schneid. Wild, Golden Knights. Again, another game I'm going to tune into. And we also got Ducks, Kraken later tonight as well. So full slate of interesting games there. Last night was also a big NBA night for me because I, there's that one really hockey game going and some other late games, but I watched a lot of NBA. And, a couple of headlines, Milwaukee Bucks get to 500 after back-to-back nights winning against the Philadelphia 76ers and the New York Knicks. 2 impressive wins. Giannis obviously is the focal point there. They're without Chris Middleton last night. So that's an impressive win at the Garden. So, the Knicks are a pretty good team. So I thought that was impressive. The Raptors lose to the Celtics. Last night was a night for the Raptors where they get dominated in the paint. That's why they lose the game, just plain and simple. Celtics had 12 offensive rebounds to the Raptors 6. And, those turn into points. And also the Raptors had 3 more turnovers. They dropped 3 in a row. And so I look at that. Lakers have won 2 in a row, both in overtime. They win Monday night against Charlotte in overtime, win in overtime last night against the Miami Heat, who are a pretty good team. So that's an impressive win for the Lakers. Sans LeBron James. But again, this team's still very much a team that's trying to figure out where they're going. You got the freight train, aka the guy who turns the ball over more than any other player in the NBA, and Russell Westbrook leads the NBA in turnovers and turnovers per game. And I still think they're trying to mix that in. Obviously, I love Anthony Davis and LeBron when they're together. I don't know if they can win with Russ. He needs the ball in his hands, and when he doesn't have the ball, he's ineffective because he shoots less than 25% from 3, which is terrible. He shoots 41% from the field, which is out of 136 ranked players, that's 135th in the league when it comes to his shot total. So he's a terrible jump shooter. And he's just a stat machine. He'll get his assist up and the ball off. He loves to grab rebounds. He plays hard every night, but sometimes it's just in the wrong fashion and it doesn't turn out as great as he'd like to. But I look at the teams that are winning so far this year, and it's going to sound like a broken record because I was just talking about this with hockey, but when you notice the same trend, stars haven't been that great this year to start. I look around and I say, well, Giannis in Milwaukee hasn't been that good. He's been okay. Trae Young hasn't been that good in Atlanta. He's been complaining about calls. James Harden's had a slow start in Brooklyn. Another guy who's complaining about the new officiating rules and saying, well, I'm not getting the calls that I used to, and it seems to be really affecting his game. So guys are trying to adjust on the fly, and it's been affecting some players. Kevin Durant's been good. He always is. But, even in LA, Anthony Davis hasn't had the greatest nights. Again, I mentioned Russell Westbrook, Rudy Gobert, Donovan Mitchell in Utah, who are on a very good team. But you talk about bench guys and guys that could win 6th man of the year. That's the award for the best player, basically the best player off the bench, who can have the biggest impact. And I look across the league, and these are just a few names of guys that just show up night in, night out and provide a spark early this season. Last night, watching the game for the Bucks, Pat Connaughton led the team in points last night. And Pat Connaughton's just this white guy who normally shoots threes. He plays tough defense, but he's an important part of the Milwaukee Bucks because they won last year as a team. PJ Tucker was integral. Yes, Giannis was great, but Middleton, Drew Holiday. But I look at it, and Connaughton was off the bench last night, had 23 points, 23, 9, and 5. That's just great production. And so far this year, he's averaging 11 points a game, 5 rebounds. He's shooting 46% from the field. I mean, that's great production from a guy. He's a guy that just will come out and have a big game when you need him to. Also Grayson Allen, he's a guy that doesn't start every game, but he's averaging 15 points when he does. He's a guy they brought over in the offseason from Utah and played at Duke. Another guy that I really like that just plays. They're both on Milwaukee, have big impacts. For Brooklyn, for me, they're winning. They're 8-4. They got Kevin Durant, like I said, he's great. Harden had a triple-double last night. But Blake Griffin was scoreless. Joe Harris had a slow start to the season. But a guy who's been really good, who retired last year because of a heart issue, is LaMarcus Aldridge. He only plays 20 minutes. He averages 20 minutes a game. He played 22 last night because they blew out Orlando. But he had, this is his last 5 games. Versus Atlanta, 10 points in 17 minutes. At Detroit, 16 points in 21 minutes. At Chicago, 19 points in 23 minutes. And last night, 21 points in 22 minutes and 8 rebounds. He's blocking shots. He's getting rebounds. He's still a very effective player. He's not asked to be the man. He was asked to be the man in Portland. He was asked to be the man in San Antonio. Now he's just a bit piece on a very, very good team. So LaMarcus Aldridge is a guy to me. Chicago Bulls are really the team at the start of the season for me, other than Golden State, but they're 8-3. The Chicago Bulls, I mean, they haven't been this good since Jordan. Well, I guess when Derrick Rose was there, but they've been struggling for a while, is my point. But they made a lot of smart signings in the offseason. Namely, I think getting DeRozan, like I said, getting Lonzo Ball, but also getting Alex Caruso from the Lakers. I can't believe they let him go. Alex Caruso is not drafted out of Texas A&M. A very good player, kind of a guy who just has all kinds of energy. But he's a guy that plays hard. And he had 16 points last night against Dallas in a tough win. But what he does is he plays defense and he aggravates people. He had 6 steals in 23 minutes last night. He had 2 steals against Brooklyn, 1 against Philly, 2 against Philly, 2 against Boston. He just plays his ass off. Only his average is 8.5 a game, but he's such a spark plug, a key part to why they're winning games. That brings us to the Lakers. Carmelo Anthony has the best 3-point shooting percentage in the NBA at this point. He's not a starter. He comes off the bench. And I look, he only had 12 last night, but this early on the season, he's averaging 17 points off the bench. Yes, he's known for being, the great Carmelo Anthony, who was a star in Denver, star in New York, but that's not him anymore. He's asked to be a depth piece here. He's accepted his role. But you look over his last 5, 15 against Houston, 21 against OKC, 12 in Portland. And then he had 29 against Charlotte and 12 last night. I mean, the guy is getting more and more of a role in this team because of his production. Malik Monk stepped up last night, had 27 off the bench. But Carmelo's been such a factor for this team. You got to appreciate that. My other one is Jordan Clarkson. He won 6th Man of the Year last year in Utah. The guy is always such a key part of that team there at 8-3 to start the season. They just have such good depth on that team, and he's a big part of it. Jordan Clarkson is a guy that just, a few games ago against Atlanta, he dropped 30 points in 31 minutes. I mean, he has the capability to be such a difference maker, and I think if they could go on a title run, it would have a lot to do with Jordan Clarkson. They play the Pacers this evening. The Heat are on a back-to-back in LA. The Raptors are on a back-to-back in Philadelphia. For the Raptors, they're working back Pascal Siakam into their lineup. Scotty Barnes has been a really good player. Obviously, the 4th overall pick in the draft. He looks like the real deal. They got a young team, and they're going to go through growing pains. They're going to go through spurts, and quite frankly, the East isn't as easy as it once was. Chicago is a lot better. Like I said, Indiana is no slouch. The Knicks are a good team. Obviously, Brooklyn, who they lost to on Sunday. So they play in Philly tonight. Then they head home for, I think, a couple, and then they go on a Western road trip. So the Raptors will be tested this year. You're going to see a lot of young guys, Malachi Flynn, Scotty Barnes. I mean, Fred VanVleet, Siakam, OG are the veterans of this team, but, Boucher even. You have a lot of guys who have not had a Delano Banton, a lot of guys who don't have a lot of NBA experience, and they're going to have to go through the growing pains. And early on, Milwaukee getting to 500. They're better than a 500 team for sure. But, who can you look at the East, the Washington Wizards and the Chicago Bulls are in first place. The Wizards, again, another guy I forgot to mention, he had 22 points last night. Montrezl Harrell, who's on his third team in 3 seasons, he's fitting in Washington. Kuzma is playing in the starting lineup, but there's no Russell Westbrook, and the team's better. And they also have a better record than the Lakers, who Russell Westbrook's on. The Bulls are 8-3. You got Brooklyn 8-4. Philly's 8-4. No Ben Simmons this year. Miami 7-4. Cleveland did lose to the Wizards last night, but they're even 7-5. They're a tough club. They play hard. Colin Sexton's injured. That'll hurt them down the stretch here. But Evan Mobley looks like a good guy. New York 7-5. You got Milwaukee, Toronto 6-6, Charlotte 6-7. Boston and Atlanta are the two big surprises. They're both under 500. Atlanta is 4-8 on the season. They are in a world of hurt after making it to the conference final last year. They need to turn it around quick, because I heard Mike Wilbon make this point on PTI last night, and I agree with him 100%. The East is not the cakewalk it was anymore. You can't afford to lose. They've lost 5 in a row. You can't do that in this Eastern Conference, because there's too many good teams. You're not going to be able to make up ground that fast. And they're in Denver tomorrow night. So that's not an easy way to turn around either. You got the Denver Nuggets. Jokic will be coming off suspension. Served that last night after he got into his altercation with Markieff Morris. But, NBA season is off to an interesting start. Always some games that you want to follow. And, another team that I kind of doubted before the season, the Clippers are 6-4. They've won 5 in a row. They got Miami tonight off a back-to-back. Jimmy Butler left the game last night for the Heat after the first quarter. So who knows if he's going to be available. So lots to see and dive into as the NBA season goes on as well. Thursday night football in the NFL, not exactly the most compelling game, but that's normally how Thursday night football works. It's the Baltimore Ravens visiting the Miami Dolphins. For Baltimore, really, this is a trap game, so to speak, because Miami is 2-7. They have nothing to play for. Tua Tagovailoa did not play last week. He injured his finger, so it's unclear if he's going to start yet. It's going to be a game time decision. But really, the Tua era is over in Miami. I still think if things go well with Deshaun Watson with his court cases, he will be the starting quarterback for the Miami Dolphins in the future. And that could be week 1 next year. If he's suspended longer than that, it could be, some point next season. So for Miami, you have nothing to play for. You're competing. They've already traded away their first round pick to the Eagles last offseason. So the Eagles currently have that pick. It's a top 5 pick right now. So that hurts the Dolphins when it comes to potentially drafting a quarterback of the future, even with this draft class, or even adding a great player like drafting an edge rusher like Aiden Hutchinson with the 3rd overall pick, or a top 5 pick wouldn't be a bad decision either. The great player from Michigan. But for Baltimore, I look at them and say, you're a good team. Your defense, your secondary could be better. Obviously, Marcus Peters not having a torn ACL would be ideal, but that's not, Marlon Humphrey's great on the other side. I do think Baltimore is still the best team in the AFC North. Cleveland, I still believe in Cleveland, but, Nick Chubb has COVID. They got to hope he can have 2 negative tests before Sunday's game against the Patriots. But otherwise, Dearness Johnson will start running back. But I think that's the most. I'll talk about this with Matt Wright tomorrow as we talk about football, college football. But it's the most intriguing game of the week for me. If I had to pick one game to watch, and I couldn't watch the rest of them, I would watch Cleveland against New England, because I want to see how Baker plays. I think both teams are similarly built. I don't think they have very good defenses. Matt Judon has been such a blessing for the Patriots. Myles Garrett, I think, is the favorite to win Defensive Player of the Year in Cleveland. So I'm interested to watch both defenses. Both quarterbacks are very much dependent on play action, dependent on the running game to be effective. So 2 teams that are very similar, 2 quarterbacks that I think are similar. So that's intriguing. But for the Ravens, just don't get complacent. Go out, win this game. I think that would improve them to 7-2. Yeah, they've had their bye, so they'd be 7-2. That's a really good start. Obviously, a very great start to the season after 10 weeks. To be 7-2, to be in that position, you get a long week of rest. So you play tonight, and you don't play until obviously week 11 when they go to Chicago. So you have some time to prepare to get ready for that. But again, Chicago's not that tough of a matchup. So you got that game. Then they play Cleveland on Sunday night. So that's a tough test. But this, still, don't fret. We're win this game and then go on. But I look at Baltimore, and the one worry I do have, and this is more long-term than short-term, potentially a short-term problem, but Lamar Jackson ran the ball 20 times last week. And they needed every rush because they only won the game in overtime. Justin Tucker putting it through the uprights. But he can't run the ball 20 times a game because he's going to take licks. And at the end of the year, his body's just going to be broken down. Like we saw last year, Kyler Murray is great at avoiding the rush when he's running. But there's times where you just they grab your leg and something can happen. Kyler Murray's got an ankle problem right now. That's why he missed the game last week against San Francisco. It could happen to Lamar, and if there's no Lamar for Baltimore, this team is screwed. Tyler Huntley's the backup quarterback, and even, Lamar is throwing to Mark Andrews, Rashad Bateman. I do like the way they're using Hollywood Brown, where he's kind of more of an underneath receiver now. He can make plays with his legs other than just being a burner, because before that, he was dropping passes every other play. Last week, you saw him more at the line of scrimmage, and he could make plays. So I enjoy that, but Lamar is the heartbeat of this team. To me, he's the MVP of the league so far. Him and Tom Brady are right neck and neck for me. I predicted Tom Brady would win it before the season. So I'd like to be right about that, but I think Lamar's been more pivotal to his team's success than Tom Brady. I think you look at the schedules too. I think Baltimore's had tougher opponents. They've gotten through it. So, but yeah, so I just know 20, you're playing the Dolphins tonight. I mean, the best case scenario for Baltimore is you get a lead after 3 quarters. Lamar doesn't play a snap in the 4th. I mean, that likely won't happen. I mean, it could happen. It's Miami, but that would be great. If Tyler Huntley takes snaps in the 4th quarter, you're handing the ball off to backup running backs. That's great. You have 10 days off, or the boys can go maybe stay in South Beach for a couple of days, enjoy themselves. But for the Ravens, take care of business tonight. It's Jacoby, even if it's Jacoby Brissett, Tua Tagovailoa, there are good receivers on the Miami Dolphins. Mike Gesicki is one of the best tight ends in the game when it comes to making one-handed grabs, running routes. Devontae Parker's been banged up all year, but he's a decent receiver. So, the secondary for the Ravens can be had. And what would be interesting if Tua does play, to see if he can exploit it. And really, to me, he's auditioning for his next stop. We see guys get that second opportunity. And I don't know if many teams love Tua, but I can't see somebody not at least signing him to be a backup quarterback. I look at Sam Darnold got another run. These guys get another run. They get 2 looks. Trubisky is a backup, but he's in Buffalo, and he's the backup to Josh Allen. I think eventually he'll get a start, not in Buffalo, but elsewhere. He'll get a look. That's just Jimmy Garoppolo was moved from New England. He's in San Francisco. These guys get another look. And, Dwayne Haskins is in Pittsburgh. We see these guys, they get another signing. There's only so many quarterbacks in the league that you'd want to have in your roster. So Tua might not be competing for a starting job in the NFL, but again, I talked earlier in the week about how many teams are going to be looking for quarterbacks at the end of the season. So potentially Tua could be playing for a starting quarterback job somewhere in the league. It's just where's the right fit. So, that's intriguing as well to see if he can play well against this Baltimore defense, where they have a great front, but what does he do against that secondary that is definitely compromised? Some other news around the NFL. Sam Darnold, who I just mentioned, hurt his shoulder. He's going to be out 4 weeks. And that means that PJ Walker, who was the MVP of the XFL, which is a league that was going during COVID, then got shut down. The league was basically shut down permanently because of COVID-19. He played in the NFL, got cut, bounced around, then went to the XFL, won the MVP. He's been the backup in Carolina the last 2 years, was Teddy Bridgewater's backup last year, backup to Sam Darnold all of this year. He's the new starting quarterback. So again, another opportunity for a guy who played well in the XFL, has been a backup quarterback. Matt Rule and Joe Brady get to work with you now for a number of weeks without Sam Darnold getting to come back in. Walker's played this year only in stopgap duty, where Darnold was yanked because of poor play. So, Darnold hasn't played well. I don't think he'll be Carolina's quarterback next year. I doubt it'll be PJ Walker either, but maybe he makes a splash. He does have athleticism, but it'll be interesting to watch him to see what he can do over the next couple weeks for the Panthers in his opportunity to be a starting quarterback. Russell Wilson was also activated off injured reserve, so he will start this weekend. And oddly enough, the Seattle Seahawks are playing the Green Bay Packers this week. And it's a couple of different interesting storylines from that matchup because Russell Wilson versus Aaron Rodgers, they played in the playoffs before, but Aaron Rodgers, will he play? Well, he can't practice till Saturday, so he'll be able to go through his walkthrough. But on the Pat McAfee show yesterday, he did admit that he had some symptoms. So for a guy that debunked COVID, he's saying that he's feeling sick. So something's going on in that body of his. So Aaron Rodgers, it's still iffy if he will play, but Russell Wilson coming off an injury, Seattle coming off a bye, Aaron Rodgers hasn't played obviously because of contacting COVID. If he doesn't go, Jordan Love will make a second straight start, but I think we'll see Aaron Rodgers on the field on Sunday. But the other interesting part of this is Odell Beckham Jr. cleared waivers. He's free to sign with any team in the NFL. And according to many reports, Seattle and Green Bay are his two preferred destinations. And this makes sense to me because he needs to go to a team where he respects the quarterback. I think Kansas City would make sense. I'm still not ruling out that destination because you got Tyreek Hill, you got Kelsey. Odell Beckham Jr. would get a lot of one-on-one matchups because they're going to double Tyreek because he's going to try to go over the top of the defense. Mahomes needs all the help he can get right now. I think Odell, I've said that Baker would be better with Odell. And I believe that to be true. If you watched last week's game, I was proven right. But that does not mean Odell Beckham Jr. is not a great player. That doesn't mean he still can add value. I just think he needs a quarterback that he really respects, that he really trusts, that he can get some wavelength with. And you saw Randy Moss was a comparison. I don't see it as direct comparison, but I think he would respect Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is a Super Bowl champion. He's established. Same with Russell Wilson. Same with Patrick Mahomes. I heard Dan Orlovsky, who I respect a ton from the mothership, pitch New England. I think that's a disaster. I think there's a 0% chance he goes to New England, but it would be more from Bill Belichick and Mac Jones' point of view. I do not want Odell with Mac Jones. Mac Jones is a rookie. Spread the ball around. He's very similar to Baker. Throw it to Hunter Henry. Throw it to Jonnu. Throw it to Kendrick Bourne. Throw it to Jacoby Myers. Dump it off to running backs. Not have one guy that thinks he's the number one receiver and, he's mad when he doesn't get the ball. No. A veteran established quarterback can deal with that. He can go have the conversation with his receiver. They can just deal with it on the field. I don't want a rookie to be put in that position. And I think Green Bay works. Again, I think Kansas City would work scheme-wise for sure. And Seattle would work too. But Seattle's tricky because you got you'd have Lockett, Metcalf, and OBJ. That's a lot of personalities. That's a lot of egos. And there's only one ball to go around. And Seattle rarely uses the tight end. That's not really a part of their offense. But I'm sure if I'm OBJ and if it's about winning a Super Bowl, I go to Green Bay. Even though the NFC is tougher to win, it's a tougher conference, I go to Green Bay because I have a hell of a lot more faith in Green Bay right now than I do Kansas City. If you watch Kansas City over the last 3-4 weeks, just making the playoffs would be a big accomplishment for them. Green Bay has impressed me. Their defense looked great last week. Aaron Rodgers has played at a very high level. They're 7-2. So you're right there at the top of the NFC. You can still battle to get that bye, even with Arizona. You own the tiebreaker with Arizona, beating them head to head. So, could you go to Green Bay? He would be the number 2 receiver because he's better than Allen Lazard. He's better than Marquez Valdes-Scantling. And Devontae Adams is going to get doubled. He gets a ton of attention. But if you have Odell Beckham Jr. on the other side, where he's likely going to get single covered, you can even put him in the slot in certain plays, and he's such an electric guy. I think that could really work. So if I'm pitching to him, I say Green Bay is the best option because you have one of the most talented quarterbacks in the history of the game. You have, alongside you could argue the best receiver in the game right now. And you have a head coach that has the best winning percentage after his first 40 games coaching in the history of the NFL. The history. Best record, best winning percentage. And an offense scheme that just seems to work. So we have to suck it up and live in Green Bay and freeze your ass off for a couple months. Yeah. But you also have a chance to win a Super Bowl. You're number 2 receiver. You're number 3 in Kansas City. You're number 3 in Seattle, in my opinion. Travis Kelce's above Odell Beckham Jr. He's going to get more targets. To me, there's no Robert Tonyan. Tight end blew his knee out. You have Mercedes Lewis and Dominique Daphne. They're both blocking tight ends. The tight end position is not going to be as valued in Green Bay as it once was. Get Devontae, get Odell. You have your two-headed monster at running back with Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. You have a strong offensive line. David Bakhtiari, the all-pro left tackle, which is activated off the physically unable to perform list. Elton Jenkins, Billy Turner, all those guys up front are playing well. Your defense is getting healthy, but it's also playing great without, they missed Eric Stokes, their first-round corner, all of last week. They still only give up 13 points. Jair Alexander-Stokes will be back. Preston Smith will be back. Devondre Campbell, who they got off the scrap heap, is playing at an elite level. It makes all the sense in the world to me for Odell to go to the Green Bay Packers. But we'll preview the Week 10 in the NFL more tomorrow. Me and Matt Wright. We'll talk about college football playoff rankings. I know we'll have a lot to rant about there. We'll talk about this week in the NFL and all that interesting news. But like I said earlier, I'll be back with Casey later today where we talk about the NHL season so far, his Canadians, the teams that are scoring with depth, preview some of the games tonight, and just what we've seen so far and what we like and what we don't like so far through the NHL season. So as I said off the top, happy Remembrance Day, everybody. I'll be back later in the day. So stay healthy, stay safe, and we'll talk soon.